Teresa, Connor, O.H., Kennedy.
We ready?
Yeah, we're ready, Jennifer.
Hey, good morning. Good to see you guys. It's been a couple weeks since we got together. So since we've talked, the legislature passed the deadline for bills to get out of their committee of origin and the fiscal committees. I think we were a couple days from that when you all were here. And so unfortunately, Senate Bill 5110 did not make it out of committee and it is dead for the session. But on a bright note, there's a House Bill 1513 that deals with youth voter registration that is still alive. And I want to walk through with you what that bill does and where it is. And we will be switching our support and our work onto that bill. So we're going to pull up a screen for you real quick here that shows you the history of this bill. And I'm going to start with, let's see here. Comes up. Okay, so we've got House Bill 1513, which concerns the collection of youth voter registration sign-up information. Those of you that met with Representative Berquist when he was here, I'm not sure which of you did, but it is his bill. He's a teacher. I think you might remember that. Anyway, the bill has passed the House, but I want to walk a little bit through the history of the bill and what it does. So this is how we can see the history of a piece of legislation. And I want to kind of walk through this for you so that you can understand what we're looking at and how you can find out information on the bill. So it was first.
Excuse me. It's really tiny on our screen. So your highlighting is good, but just make sure you're narrating because we can't really see the writing much.
We're zooming in a little bit here.
Thanks. All right.
That better?
Oh, much better.
Okay, good. So so the bill was introduced on January 23rd. That was the original when it was first read in, and then it was sent to the Committee on State Government in the House. It had its first hearing on February 3rd, and then the House moved the bill out of committee on February 7th. So this is where we can see the vote. So if you look there on February 7th, it says majority do pass and a minority do not pass. So there were no votes on this bill coming out of committee. So if we click on the minority report, it tells us who voted no. And also you can click on the majority report and it would tell you who voted yes. So the bill is not unanimous. It had opposition, but it moved out of that committee and then it went to the Transportation Committee. You might ask why a bill on youth voting would go to the Transportation Committee, and that's because it deals with the Department of Licensing, right, in terms of youth voter registration. So the bill went there. It had a hearing in the House Committee on Transportation on the 21st, and then it was voted out of the House Committee on Transportation, but it was changed. So you see here where it says majority first substitute bill be substituted. That means they made changes to it. And what they did when they had the bill is they added, they gave different options like online, by mail, or Department of Licensing or other locations. So meaning basically you could pretty much at 16 or 17 sign up to vote, pre-register vote, not just at Department of Licensing. It also made some other I would call somewhat technical amendments to it. We can talk about those if you want. The one thing that I thought that was interesting is that the Secretary of State, that's our statewide elected official who is in charge of elections, she is opposed to this bill, and she testified opposed to this bill. Her primary concern deals with perception of whether or not the data, let's say you sign up when you're 16, whether or not that information about you, whether your address or what have you, would still be valid when you turn 18. Seems like kind of a weak argument from my perspective, but that was her major concern. And also the cost to the Secretary of State of adding information about 16 or 17-year-olds to the database. So in any event, however, even with that opposition, the bill did move out of the Transportation Committee. Again, we have a majority report and a minority report. But you'll notice here we have 2 minority reports. The first one is a minority that says do not pass. So those are people that voted no. And then you have a minority report that is without recommendation. And that was signed by Representative Pike. When a member votes something out of committee without recommendation, it means they haven't made their decision yet, whether they're going to support it or oppose it. So it's sort of like a neutral, not voting for or against it. So it came out of the Transportation Committee, went to the Rules Committee, and then from the Rules Committee went onto the floor 2 days ago. And the amendments from the Transportation Committee were adopted. There was a floor amendment adopted. So if we go down, remember that that you can change a bill at any point. So down here in these amendments, you'll see there were 3 amendments drafted, but over on the right, it says what happened. 2 of them were withdrawn. That means they weren't discussed, but a 3rd amendment was adopted. And that was an amendment by Representative Berquist that made some clarifying changes to the penalties associated if somebody lies basically and doesn't put the correct information in their registration. So that amendment was adopted. And then what happens to the bill, it gets rolled into what's called an engrossed substitute. And so that engrossed substitute was passed off the House floor 2 days ago, 53 to 45. And we'll look at the roll call now. And this tells us who voted for or against the bill. So all the Democrats in the House voted for the bill, and all the Republicans voted against it except 2. We have 2 Republicans that voted for it, Representative Graves and Representative Stambaugh. And an interesting data point here is they are 2 of the youngest members of the legislature, which is interesting that they decided to vote with the Democrats on this bill. So we have almost a party line vote, but we can call it bipartisan because there were a couple of Republicans that voted with the Democrats. So now this bill goes over to the Senate, and it needs to go and have a hearing in the Senate State Government Committee. So it needs to start the same process all over in the Senate. And you'll recall that Senator Miloscia was not too excited about this bill. He's the one that is the chair of that committee. But the other piece I'd like to point out to you, and I'll send this to you in your bill report, Senator Miloscia has a bill, and that was that one, remember we talked about it a lot at lunch when you were here, that deals with district-based elections. And that bill is also still alive in past the Senate. So we could reach a position here where the Senate has the bill they want, which is the district-based elections, and the House has the bill they want, which is youth voter registration, and they could come up with some compromise to allow those things to go forward. So before we talk about next steps, I'll pause and see if you have any questions about where the bills are, or what's happening in the process, or any of that kind of stuff.
Didn't the Secretary of State have her own voter registration bill for 17-year-olds? Was that passed?
No, it did not, but you're correct. And I think the recollection is she would prefer only 17-year-olds, not 16-year-olds. I don't really understand why that is, but I have a next step on that piece that I maybe can shed some light on. But it did not pass.
Yeah, because it's due today, is it in here? All right.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
So how, like, I don't know if you know enough about 1513, but how, like, similar is it to the 5110 bill?
It's very similar in that it allows that youth voter registration to be collected at Department of Licensing, but it also goes beyond 5110 in that it allows it in other areas, online, you know, your school, et cetera. But it also has those provisions about that school temperance day where social studies teachers would have people from, excuse me, the auditor's office come and talk about voter registration to kids. So the way I would describe the difference is 5110 was very specific into doing that sort of automatic when you get your license. This one does that, but it also has other pieces in it. So I would say it's more expansive. And we can do kind of a side-by-side comparison for you. I'll send you a list of kind of the differences in an email so you can see them.
So why is it that the House bill made it through to the Senate, but 5110 didn't when they're both like really similar?
Yeah, so remember the House is controlled by Democrats, the Senate is controlled by Republicans. And then we look at the vote in the House, and it was all Democrats and 2 Republicans voted for it. Most of the Republicans were opposed to it. The Secretary of State, who's a Republican, is opposed to it. So Senator Malosha is not really, and he's the chair of the State Government Committee in the Senate. He's a Republican. He's not really supportive of this concept. So what you have is kind of competing ideas. The Senate Republicans want to move to district-based elections and those other things. Democrats want to have youth voter registration. That's why I said I think we could see a situation where there's some sort of negotiation and some sort of deal that's worked out on this. So this issue is kind of shaping up to be a bit partisan, even though there are some that support it. Some Republicans support youth voting. Yeah, in the back.
Are there like any main differences between this bill and U-110 that aren't like the changes made by the Transportation Committee?
Not too many. I mean, I would say the biggest one is the expansion of the different options. So online and other areas where you can register, but also the Temperance Day for social studies teachers to do that information on elections and voting in schools, public schools. Any other questions on that? So there's 2 things that, I see one in the back, sorry.
Is it possible for maybe someone's vote to, I guess, be more important than others, I guess? Like,
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry.
is it possible for a representative's vote to be more important than another's?
That's a very interesting question. So every vote is the same in terms of when, the final vote, it's the 53 to 45. They're all equal. However, there are legislators that have more power than others. The chairman of a committee decides what bills get a hearing. So if Senator Malosha says this bill doesn't get a hearing, he doesn't get a hearing. So his vote is not more powerful, right? Because when they actually vote, his vote's all the same. But there are people with more power. The leadership in the House and leadership in the Senate decide which bills go to the floor for an actual vote. So there are varying degrees of power depending on what your position is in the legislature. But from just a pure vote standpoint, all votes are the same. Yeah, in the front.
So why don't the Republicans like the bill at all, the motor voter? What's wrong?
Well, so this is interesting. There are political reasons and then there are non-political reasons. So I think the Secretary of State, she doesn't like it because she says it's going to cost more money to do this in the Secretary of State's office. She's also concerned about making sure that the information provided is real. But also, I mean, I think there's the Republicans like district-based elections because that, in their mind, ensures that that people from the district are better able to. I'm not saying that right. Let me think. I'll put that one aside. I think people are concerned about who will register to vote. Is it going to be more Democrats? Is it going to be more Republicans? And there are differing views on whether or not this bill will provide for more of one party or another to vote. This is the kind of the politics of the thing. So, so there's a couple things that I need you guys to do. One is we need to go back to Senator Malosha and the members of the State Government Committee and email them again and ask for them to please have a hearing on House Bill 1513 and move it forward. So that needs to happen, next week. We need to make sure we do that. And the other is I thought it would be useful for you all to email your support for this bill to the Secretary of State's office and let her know that you actually would like her to be supportive of this bill or at least work with this bill. I think you might get some responses back that would shed a little more light onto why she's opposed to it. And we might be able to get a little better information and therefore develop better arguments for why it needs to go forward. So I'm going to send you the emails again to the legislators on that committee. I'm also going to send you the Secretary of State's email. And I think we take our same arguments and reasons why this is a good bill. And we can say this has bipartisan support. There are Republicans that support it. There are Democrats that support it, and that it's very important that it move forward. I think it will be we'll see. But I think that Senator Malosha will for sure give it a hearing, but we need to really push him on that. And then the question is whether we can get him to bring it up for a vote in the committee and move it out. Any questions on that?
Do you think we should email her just like one email representing everybody in the class? Or have individuals email her?
I think volume is better.
Okay.
More than one per, it's better for her to get a bunch of emails and then she has to actually pay attention. There's more than, there's a whole bunch of people that are telling her they really want her to think about this. Okay, one last question in the way back there.
So, but like, if we all say like we're from Ballard High School and like we're working with this program, isn't that like not really? She's just gonna kind of glaze over the fact that we're like all part of the same group.
There's definitely information there, but it's just there's definitely the risk of that, but also volume of people saying one thing, saying this makes it harder to ignore it. Put it that way. And also you all have your own unique reasons for why you like this. They're not all exactly the same. And I think providing her with different perspective and different ideas is a good thing to do. And she will probably respond, or somebody will respond for her office and explain why they are in that position. And we've talked about this before. You be respectful, you just say we understand based on your testimony in House Transportation that you're opposed to this bill. Wondering why. I'm very supportive of it, and here's my reasons why, and I'd love to hear more about why you are not supporting that bill. Okay.
That overall strategic question came up, when we were talking about emailing members of the state committee and Malosha. People ask, well, why are we all emailing, basically coming from the same place, the same general idea, as opposed to maybe just sending one and we all put our names on it.
So volume matters in legislators' offices and others there. So think about it this way. The teachers union, when the teachers union has something they want to have done, Greg, you know this, you get an email, hey, call your legislator. They want a whole bunch of people to communicate. There also is obviously communication going that's singular communication from the whole group. That's me for you guys. I'm telling people Ballard High School wants this, this Capital Classroom at Ballard wants this, and I'm the voice of the whole group, but you're adding your individual opinions and your individual voices by also sending your individual emails. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Now I have to run to my 10 o'clock meeting, so I'm sorry, but I will send you this email and we'll get going.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.